Today we have Gail Robertson here. Gail's a crisis communicator of Gail Now. She's also a connector and a keynote speaker. Gail, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the invite, Robert.
So the first question is always, how are you and your family doing during this time?
Well, you know what? I've been someone who has been working remotely, working at home now for about a year and a half. So I have my office set up, and I've been almost had that preparation side of things. But, I'm a pretty social person. So, it is hard to not be getting together with as many people. But you know what? It's all perspective. So I feel very blessed for many reasons. So, I'm doing fairly well, all things considered.
Excellent. Communication's always important, but it's elevated during a crisis. What should we be doing during these unprecedented times?
Well, yes, I'm a great advocate for always communicating. So a lot of the clients and the organizations I'm working with right now, I am encouraging them to keep talking and communicating, whether it's with their clients, with their staff, and with the community. But in terms of for the consumers of that information, some of the things I recommend is to have balance and to try to make sure that you're not, over consuming some of that communication information, because it can be very difficult for some people to manage through that and deal with some of the difficulties. Just like the news we just heard. We're hearing this, if we hear it once during the day, but sometimes if we're hearing it over and over again, it can be cause for concern for some people. So I always say, try to balance out the amount of information that you're absorbing each day related to COVID.
Social media and podcasting are relatively new in a time of crisis in the world. What are some tips or concerns when using or consuming social media?
Well, yes, certainly social media is now, I always said, as a great advocate for it, it is a bit of a double-edged sword, and it has many great benefits. But again, going back to that balance, making sure that you have a balance of of content that you're taking in. And certainly it has many benefits. There's lots of opportunities to use social media and to use podcasts. So for example, there's ways to keep in touch, to keep up with what's happening, and also to read a diversity of views. So I'm a big Twitter person. I use it a lot for my news, but I also use it for engagement, for connecting with people. And there's lots of positivity out there as well, that you can connect on certain platforms with other people that may have similar uplifting views that you can connect with. I know one example is the Canadian Mental Health Association has their Keep Connected campaign, where they talk about different ideas and suggestions for people to use social media and use various platforms. And then when it comes to podcasts, there's lots of podcasts and information out there that isn't only about COVID. So I would recommend people, research, use podcasts, certainly listen to the different shows, even on our local media as well. There are other opportunities to tap into shows and use some of that for both learning about the broader perspective of what we're going through, but also to use it for non-COVID information, motivation, meditation, and information.
I think it's interesting you just said that, having our television station here, and there's so much going on around the world, but we really need to focus also on what's happening in our community.
Yes, I strongly recommend. There's a lot of people. I used to work in local media, so I used to be a journalist. So I have definitely a deep passion and love for information. And curiosity is one of my trademarks. I think anybody that's worked with me or dealt with me is that I tend to ask a lot of questions. I'm very inquisitive. And our local media is out there, and I have seen some amazing things done locally. People are sharing information, and there still is so many good news stories out there too. So we have to remember that in the midst of hearing, some of those stats this morning, there's also a balance out there of other information. And, I always say, this is the hand we're dealt. How do we best deal with it? And we don't have to like it all the time. And at times we're going to find it stressful, difficult, and horrific for some people, what they're going through, especially what we just heard about with some of the seniors' homes. But that's the hand we're dealt. So how is the best way we deal with it? And that's where we can use communications to get the resources to help us deal with that.
Is there a difference in posting or commentating as an individual or as a company?
On that, yes and no. I do recommend when it comes to posting, well, there is a difference because there's the corporate view sometimes that comes across on a corporate account versus a personal view. So often with organizations, people I'm working with, I do recommend that they have a person that actually is also using social media to convey information. So there's that element for people that have businesses, small businesses, and even looking to do some personal branding. I would recommend, though, that people be very aware that everything you're posting, everything you're commenting on is part of your brand. So even if you're on Facebook and you are working for a company or you have your own company or your own business, if you're commenting on a post that may be controversial or even inappropriate, that will be part of your brand. So I use this a lot, and I try to remember it myself. You can also disagree without being disagreeable. So you can have a difference of opinion. You can also keep scrolling. You don't have to stop and comment on things. And so I'd recommend that as, an awareness of, all that content's out there. And there's a lot of people, there's a lot of controversial information. There was just a news story out today about, false information being promoted. So people really need to be aware of that. And though sometimes you can just keep scrolling and you don't have to stop and comment on everything.
And I think that kind of leads into what I was, looking at is the stress, especially now at this time. And I think it's excellent advice that you give regarding social media and how to try and alleviate some of that stress, to look for some of the good stuff that's going on in our community.
Yeah, it's really important that you keep that balance. And there is now opportunity. People now are tapping into learning about technology and using technology they maybe never thought they would be using. And there's so much information out there. And I think it's a matter of curating your content too. That's really important. I do recommend to anyone, usually people that say, social media, it's just people posting what they had for dinner or what their selfies. But that's only one element. There is so much out there when you know who to follow and how to find the right people to follow to get the right information. I don't know if you heard, that's my cat in the background. That's be part of the show. It's interesting. Whenever she's quiet, except when I'm talking, and I think she thinks I'm talking to her. So that's Miss Pippi. I'll do a shout out to her.
Miss Pippi, well, she's a big fan of your TV probably, so that's why she wants to get on. We'll have to book an appointment to get her on also. Gail, what are you looking forward to after this pandemic?
Probably the biggest thing will be that freedom to go out without putting on gloves. I'm very limited to my going out. I think the last time I went out was about 2 weeks ago, and I actually went to give blood. So I will do a plug for that.
Yes.
There is need for blood, and it was very safe to do so. And that was I felt also something that I can do because I'm healthy and I'm not in a high risk category. So I prepared for everything. And the other thing looking forward to going would be just that socialization aspect. I did miss on the Easter weekend not going to. I have an adopted family that I go to. They bring me into their home and I did miss that sense of gathering and sense of community. And but again, it goes back to I think we also need to prepare for the longer term. And what else can we do in terms of using other social media and tools to communicate, but probably just a freedom to move about without that sense of I have to go out, gloves, mask, and yeah.
Well, I'm glad you gave the shout out to Canadian Blood Services, because blood is needed, and there are clinics today over on Grand Marais, but you need to book your appointment.
Yes.
That's critical.
And what I did was I went online first. I did all the questions. I made sure that if I was going to go there, I didn't want to get bumped out once I got there. But I can say they did a great job of making sure, the distancing, and the staff, they were wiping down the chairs. It was, I felt very safe and very comfortable, and they were so pleasant. So, there's a lot of frontline workers out there. There's the hospital workers, but there's also, in the organization I work with, Canadian Mental Health, there's a lot of nurses, social workers also out there. So just be kind, be considerate,
Yeah.
and we can still communicate.
Yeah. So, Gail, I know you're all over Twitter. Do you want to give us your Twitter handle in case people are...
Well, it's pretty simple. It's at Gail Now. And yes, I always tell people if anybody ever wants to find me, it's pretty easy to find me. I'm on Twitter. And if you Googled Gail Now, you'll find me. And certainly if anyone does ever, if they want to shoot me a direct message through that, or if they have any questions about social media, I'd be happy to offer any information and tips. And yeah, hope everybody stays safe and keeps communicating.
Excellent. Gail, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time today. Some important information they're getting out. So all I can say to you is stay safe and stay well.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. Have a great day.